Welcome to Eureka Math. This is Module 1, Lesson 2, and our objective today is to reason abstractly using place value understanding to relate adjacent base 10 units from millions to thousands. Okay, let's figure out what that means. So we have our place value chart, and over here we have millions, and then 100,000s, and 10,000s, and thousands, hundreds, tens, ones, there we've got our decimal, tenths, hundredths, and thousandths. Okay? So when we say adjacent base 10 units from, right here, from millions to thousands, what they're saying is these squares next to each other, right? Because each of these is multiplied by 10 or divided by 10 to go left or right, okay? So 1 times 10 is 10. 10 times 10 is 100. 100 times 10 is 1,000. 1,000 times 10 is 10,000. 10,000 times 10 is 100,000. 100,000 times 10 is 1,000,000. Okay? And it goes, you can start all the way here. 1,000ths times 10 is 100ths. Hundredths times 10 is tenths. Tenths times 10 is 1. Okay? So we're relating these back and forth. Okay? So this is our place value chart. Now we're going to reason abstractly. That means that we're not going to use this chart on every problem. If you need to get one out, you have one in your book. But at this point, you should know how this works and what it looks like, and if you need to create one in your problem or refer to one to help you, wonderful. Otherwise, reason abstractly. Reason means to think. Abstractly means in our heads, okay? We're going to think about this in our heads to take this one step further from Lesson 1. So please open your problem set to Lesson 2, write your name on the paper, and we're going to solve these problems. Okay, so here we have 54,000. Okay, so this 5 is in the 10,000th spot, and we're going to multiply it by 10, which means we're going to make it bigger. And so if this is in the 10,000th spot, we're just going to move it over to the 100,000th spot. So that would be 540,000. Okay? And really, what did we do? We just took this 0 here and we added it there. Okay? Now, B. This is division. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this, however many zeros here, we're going to take them off. Okay? So that means this new answer is going to be 5,400. Okay? So if you multiply by 10, you add a 0. If you divide by 10, you take away a 0. If there's no 0, you just move the decimal over. Okay? Does that make sense? I hope it does. 8.7 times 10. Well, that means this decimal point is going to go over 1. And we're going to take 8.7 and we're going to turn it into 87. If you want to put the decimal point back in, that's okay. I'll take either this answer or 87. Doesn't matter. Okay, now I'm dividing, so that means that this decimal point is going to go this way. Okay, so 8 ones and 7 tenths becomes 87 tenths. That means my answer is that. Okay, because I had to move the decimal over because I'm dividing by 10. If you just write 0.87, I will also take it, but I do need to be able to see the decimal point, okay? E. So these were all by 10. multiplying by 10 to make the number bigger, dividing by 10 to make the number smaller, multiplying by 10 to make the number bigger, dividing by 10 to make the number smaller. Over here, it's 100, and you know that 100 equals 10, equals 10 times 10, which also equals 10 squared. Okay, so there's that exponent. We will be learning about exponents. So that means that I have 2 zeros I need to deal with, 2 zeros, or I'm moving over 2 boxes on my chart, right? Let's see if I counted right. Oh, I did. Okay, so instead of 0.13, I'm going to multiply and I'm going to move that over 2 spaces. So I'm going to move this decimal space over 1, 2 because there are 2 zeros, and my new answer is 13. Okay, now 13 divided by, so there's that decimal, I'm going to add it in there, divided by 1,000. That means there's 1, 2, 3 zeros there. So I need to move this over 1, 2, but guess what? There's nothing there, so I'm going to have to add a 0, 3, and my new answer is 0.013, or 13 thousandths. Or if you write it like this with the 0 in front, that's still good. Okay, I kind of prefer this just so I know what I'm doing. Okay, now we're multiplying by 1,000, so that's 3 zeros. So 1,000 equals 10 times 10 times 10, which equals 10 cubed, or 10 to the 3. There's my exponent, right? 10 times 10 times 10. That means I'm moving it over 3 squares, right? So 3 squares, the decimal is going 1, 2, and I have to add a 0, 3. So 3,120. All right. And now I'm dividing by 100, and 100 is just 10 times 10. So that's 2 spaces. And I'm making the number smaller, so my spaces are going this way. 1, 2. And my new answer is 40 and 312 thousandths. Okay. Hope you're understanding this place value stuff. Multiplying by 10 and dividing by 10, that's all we're doing. Sometimes we're multiplying by 10 a couple times, like this one, right? Because 10, and then we're multiplying by 10 again. And sometimes we multiply by 3 times, 10 times 10 times 10. But all we're doing is moving back and forth by 10. So 19,340 becomes 193,400. We just added a 0 on the end. Now I'm going to add 2 zeros, so 19340, and then 2 more zeros. So I'm going to put a comma here and a comma here. And then here I'm going to add 3 zeros, 1934. Ooh, this pen, 4, 0, and then 1, 2, 3 more, because I added 3 zeros on the end. Now I have 19,340,000. Okay. Explain how you decided on the number of zeros in the products for A, B, and C. Well, I added 1 0 here, right? Because there's 1 0 here. I added 2 zeros here because there's 2 zeros here. And I added 3 zeros here because there's 3 zeros here, because it's 10 times 10 times 10, or 10 times 10, or 10. Okay, so I looked at the number of zeros in the, what do we call that? In the number being multiplied. And I added them to the answer. Okay. Number 3, find the quotients. So we're just doing the same thing. This was the product up here. Product, remember, means multiply. Whenever you see the word product, that means multiply. And whenever you see the word quotient, that means divide. So now I'm going to subtract a 0. Okay, but how do I subtract a 0 when there's no 0 there? All right, so I have 152, but there's no 0 at the end, so I'm going to add a 0 here on my place value chart. So that you can see here's my ones, my tens, my hundreds. So if I'm taking something away, I'm going to move it over one space, right? So I'm going to move this number here, and that number here, and this number here. So I'm going to end up with 15 and 2/10. Okay, so I moved that over one space. Okay, now let's do it again. This time, what am I doing? I'm really just dividing by 10 times 10, and I already divided by 10 once. So 10 times 10 means I'm just going to move it over one more time, or 2 times from the original, right? And my new answer is 1 and 52 hundredths, okay? And here, it's 10 times 10 times 10 equals 1,000. So I'm just going to move it over one more time. Okay, so this goes here, that goes there, and this goes here. And my new answer is 152 thousandths. Explain how you decided where to place the decimal in the quotients. So what did we actually do? Here we moved the decimal one place. Here we moved the decimal 2 places. And here we moved the decimal 1, 2, 3 places. We moved the decimal the same amount of spaces as there were zeros, right? Janice thinks that 20 hundredths is equal to 2 thousandths because 2 hundredths is equal to 2 thousandths. Okay, so she thinks that 20 hundredths, which would be here, right? So we usually put the 0 in the thousandth spot. So she thinks 20 hundredths is equivalent to 2 thousandths. Well, let's do 2 thousandths. Because 200ths, oh, sorry, 20 hundredths, is that 20 hundredths? Yes, because 20 hundredths is equal to 2, thousandths. All right, so here's 2,000, and here's 2,000, but you could also call this 20 hundredths, right? If you move the 2 here, 20 hundredths. So that's right. This one is correct. But 20 hundredths, which would be here, is not the same to 2 thousandths, is it? Because that would move that over there. Use words in a place value chart to correct Janice's error. Okay, so 20 hundredths does not equal 2 thousandths. Right? It just doesn't. Yep. And then we could just say, please, let's see. The 2 is not in the same place on the place value chart. Okay. Oh, my handwriting is getting worse. You know, I've got tendinitis, and it's showing up today. Okay, there we go. It's showing up in my handwriting. Number 5, Canada has a population that is about 1/10 as large as the United States. If Canada's population is about 32 million, how many more people live in the United States? Okay, so let's go ahead and use a number chart. And they said 32 million, so 32 million would be here. And that's a 0, and that's a 0, and that's a 0. And then there's a comma there, and that's a 0, and that's a 0, and that's a 0. And then we get to our decimal point, and then we've got right? Okay, so here is our ones, tens, hundreds. That's an S, not a 5. Thousandths, 10,000ths, 100,000ths, and then millions. So this is millions, but if we want to put a line, we can actually call this 10 millions here. All right, so 32 million or 32 million. Now, if Canada's population is 1/10 as large, that means that we are going to multiply by 10, or we could divide by 10. All right, that means that we're going to have to go over one more space. Okay, so we're going to go here. We're just, and I'm going to pretend there was a 0 there. Okay, so now we have 320 million. How did we get there? How did we do that? Okay, well, we know the population of the United States is bigger, so obviously the number's going to go this direction, right? And 1/10, well, tenths, this is 1/10 here, right? That means we're going to have to go 1 square over because there's a 10 in that number. And let's see, 32 million times 10 equals 320 million. Or the way they wrote it, and which is why this question is confusing, they said, we don't know the population of the United States. We just know that it's 1/10 of 32 million. This is why the writing is so confusing for you, because this is the question they gave you. And we had to rewrite it in a different way. So whatever this number is times 1/10 would equal 32 million. I don't think that's quite fair this early in the unit, so I wrote it for you like this. 32 million times 10 equals 320 million. But if you understand this, awesome. So the question was, we don't know what the answer is, times 1/10 equals 32 million. Well, the answer was 320 million. So, and if we want to take those words off, we can actually break this apart for you a little bit. 320 times 1/10 equals 32, okay? And if you remember, multiplication is the opposite of division. So if we have 1/10, we can just flip it around and say 320 divided by 10 equals 32. Okay? Which means we could write it like this too. 32 times 10 equals 320. Okay? We're going to get into that a little bit more. This was a hard question. So if you just wanted to use your place value charts and your own reason, right? Because we know the population of the United States is bigger than the population of Canada. You knew that was going to be bigger. And you saw the 10, so you knew it was going to go over 1. Okay? But we're going to get more into this a little bit. And if this is like, you understand this, awesome. Awesome. That's great. Okay. Wonderful. We will go through the homework tomorrow in class. Have a great day.